Thank you everyone for attending today, the session on combating tech-enabled financial crimes through governance and collaboration. I'd like to get started with our dear friend Ahmed. If we can just start talking about your experience from the bank, what are some of the emerging threats that you're seeing at the moment?
Okay. So thanks everyone for joining, and it's been a pleasure to be here, part of this great event. So I think there's a lot of discussions happening through the last couple of years and in this event on how we can use and leverage AI and emerging technology in combating things like fraud or financial crime. So I come basically from a banking background where the AI and the machine learning will really help with a lot of use cases when it comes to financial crime and fraud prevention and things like AML, of course. So for example, as you all know, machine learning and AI is based on the analysis of a vast amount of data, and it can use this to identify some kind of patterns based on historical data, which can help identify more suspicious and fraudulent activities. Nowadays, with all the social engineering and with all the new kind of techniques and tactics that hackers and attackers are using, and spams and spoofings, it becomes really very difficult with the old kind of technologies to detect such kind of fraud analytics. With machine learning, by analyzing the historical transaction, by studying the patterns, it can really help. With the agents now, with the human agents or the agents, the AI, agentic AI now, it can even instruct these agents for example, to detect or maybe ask for more authentication, more security questions, more security verifications, which might help identifying such thing. And most importantly, with the AI, it can predict, with the predictive analysis, the future. So what this person, what this entity, what might be the future, for example, transactions, what might be the future activities. And based on this, we can at least combat some of these fraudulent activities. Nevertheless, also, there's a lot of things coming now with the behavior, because a lot of the attackers are using more about behavior. So with analyzing also the behavior of the persons and the people and getting some kind of footprint of them, you can really detect and help in this battle, because it's an eternal battle between the good and the bad, as you all know. So every time they're trying to get some more sophisticated tools, and the defender sides, the financial institutions are trying to add more to combat this as well.
Are you finding the tools that are actually out there that exist to help you with this sort of battle against good AI versus bad AI? Are you finding the tools are available on the market, or there's still like a shortage in that area?
There's a lot of tools, of course, in the market. I cannot say everything is bright and it will detect everything. There's always some setbacks, there's some challenges. Okay. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with the human, you're dealing with their wealth, you're dealing with their money, you're dealing with their personal data. You need to put some investments. There will be some challenges. There will be, of course, some maybe false positives. But again, that's where we need to deal with, that's where we need to adapt and evolve as well to shorten the gaps between us and the attackers and so on.
Oh, definitely. Thank you. Tim, from your perspective, I mean, I know you work across Africa.
Yes.
What are you seeing in terms of emerging threats, but also what are you seeing in terms of some of the challenges? Because obviously you're not just localized within one area, so obviously you've got a whole region to cover.
Yeah, so I think probably one of the biggest challenges that we see is how fast the criminal networks are able to adopt the technologies. If you look at something like AI, while traditional financial industries are slowly, gradually in a phased manner adopting AI, you find that the criminal networks are much more agile. They are faster in terms, and we have seen that even attacking our own networks. They're much more faster in terms of embracing any emerging technology like artificial intelligence, like blockchain. And it started off from way long. If you look at something like a blockchain, I think those of you who know the Silk Road that was used for sharing of selling of drugs, it is only now when governments now are beginning to consider blockchain technology. So from a security perspective, it's the same thing that we see. From ourselves, from our teams, I think one of the things that we are trying to embrace across Africa because of the potential, the youth potential that is there, what we are trying to do is to leverage the same youth, trying to attract them with programs that's what they can veer off to the side of being the good hacker. As opposed to joining the criminal cyber security networks, trying to embrace and ensure that as they continue, as we grow, we have a youth pipeline that can be able to work, that can provide us with talent to protect us.
Very good. And also, how about in terms of like the collaboration across the region? I mean, what sort of frameworks are there in place, or are there like associations? I mean, how are you finding that collaboration across countries, financial institutions?
I have to be honest, it is a challenge. Regulations within each of the different markets which we operate in are very strict. And they are different. They have slight tweaks, differences. So you can't apply one common process across each of the different countries. Yeah. And I understand that because each of the regulators will have a slightly different perspective, a slightly different risk profile from a cybersecurity. Most of the regulators are catching up in terms of the importance of cybersecurity. Previously, from a financial perspective, what was important for them was anti-money laundering, KYC, but now the cybersecurity regulations, the pushback we have from all the different regulators we have across Africa are increasing exponentially.
Look, are we seeing at least some sort of coordination, collaboration around, say, fraud intelligence or like intelligence information that the other organizations within the region can also then benefit from, like you're seeing attacks from a certain area or seeing certain kinds of fraud being perpetrated?
Within the countries nationally, yes, there is quite a lot. Yeah. Each of the countries at least has already set up a SAT. That's a national cybersecurity organization for visibility in terms of what are the common cybersecurity attack vectors that they are seeing. I think, for instance, from a Kenyan, South African perspective, the biggest attack vectors that they were seeing was phishing and ransomware. And I think even one of our competitors was even on the headlines just recently because of a ransomware attack. However, within a continent-wide perspective, I think that collaboration still has some room for growth. Yeah. Gradually, once regulators at least can be able to leverage on what other national regulators are seeing, I think that will continue to grow.
Yeah, definitely, thank you. Mamuka, from your perspective, I mean, I know you work on a much more global scale. I mean, what are some of the challenges you're seeing? And I guess some of the question to Tim in here in terms of the frameworks or the methods of collaboration and coordination on a global scale, I guess, would even be more challenging. What's your experience?
Well, thank you, Ned. During these 2 days, we are discussing here AI role or AI influence on regulatory framework, judiciary, everyday life. And the keywords what we have identified, at least from my perspective, was trust and oversight, or trust but oversight, whatever connotation you would prefer, both apply. When it comes to fighting financial crimes on a global level, I think two main principles, two main standards we should keep in mind is willingness and cooperation, willingness and capacity. Why I'm saying this? Because unlike AI influence, AI role in all these developments, we don't have minimum standards. We don't really have too much international standards or instruments which we can apply. While when it comes to fighting financial crimes, we do really have full scale of all the available instruments that that could work or shall work or will work. But for them to work, we need, again, willingness and the capacity. What I mean by willingness, we have a lot of standards, and those standards mainly which are determined by Financial Action Task Force. We have a number of recommendations, and there are certain recommendations which specifically apply to fighting financial crimes, including tech-enabled crimes. These are recommendations 15 on virtual assets, 16 on transparency of payments, and we have also recommendation 1, which is about coordinating and applying risk-based approach. So that's really instrumental. Then we have other UN instruments, and we have many legal, let's say, capacity to apply and to be efficient. Now, willingness is because countries really have to take a lot of measures, have a willingness to conduct these steps. And this way, I mean, we are in UA, and I really have to commend what the authorities of this country have done during the past years, including in promoting this nationally, but also playing active role internationally. We all know there are FATF-style regional bodies, and the EUA is a member of MENA FATF, which is actually, these 2 days are gathering in Jordan for their plenary. But I also understood that UAE has joined APG, which is Southeast Asia Pacific FAT-style body. and even I think plenary of this APG session, plenary took place last year in Abu Dhabi. So this is very important. We have to cooperate. We have to exchange information. If you go to ChatGPT and ask the question we have here, how to combat tech-enabled financial crimes, it will give you 3 main topics. And I even checked this morning, and exactly what I was planning to say. That's why I'm not repeating it. It was identical. So you have to have a good regulatory framework. Basically, applies this risk-based approach, which is envisaged by FATF. You have to have, international cooperation ensured, and you have to ensure capacity building. You have to ensure that all actors, be it penal chain, be it justice, be it regulators, they are up to date with new developments. Because, as I think it was mentioned by gentlemen already, these criminals are always in front of us. It's impossible to go ahead because we don't know which kind of resource or which kind of options they will choose for their in their activities. However, being not too far away from them, I think that's an objective. And for this, we need, again, willingness of country to do and the capacity of countries to cope with these topics. And last point, and I'll stop here, I think, is that, for us to be efficient, it's not just enough to, close our doors. What's really important, and that's my work since last 7 years, we are trying to ensure that, most countries are able to receive the assistance, and UAE actually is very active in the region as well in promoting some of the standards in its neighboring countries, because again, I mentioned it yesterday, I will repeat it today, nationally we won't be able to fight financial crimes, which is never ever limited within one country's boundaries. Thank you.
Yeah, like we're seeing it in general, I think, as well from my side, from investigations that we're conducting these days. Everything is going cross-border, and that's where the collaboration becomes critical, because the minute you leave your jurisdiction, now you're at the mercy of the other side. And if there isn't that coordination and collaboration together, then the criminals know where the holes are, and they take advantage. And we're seeing it a lot today as well in terms of using technology. Yeah, we'd like to talk about innovation. Unfortunately, the corporations, the governments, everyone, we like to do innovation, but they innovate much faster. So we do play a lot of catch-up, and we have to sort of be always at least catching up with them, and where possible, try and get ahead of them and see how we can leverage these technologies to our advantage. Because at the moment, we know 100% they are leveraging it to their advantage.
If I may just to maybe underline, because it's, in my opinion, it's really important, and it's really applied by prosecutions, by law enforcement agencies. We all know, and it's become recent practice, and we are always advising, one thing is formal cooperation, when you are applying for some assistance from another country, another jurisdiction. But what is becoming more and more efficient is applying informal cooperation. Networking is really important. It has even more efficient results than just sending some official letters of rogatory or request for mutual legal assistance. We have to interact, we have to network, and we have to, like prosecutors are doing, instead of sending a letter which can come back with a reply in 2 or 3 months or maybe 1 year or maybe never, you pick up the phone, your counterpart, with whom you have to interact. You pick up the phone, or you're sending an email or WhatsApp message, doesn't matter. That's how we should work, and it applies to actually all fields, whether it will be private sector, whether it will be law enforcement, investigative authorities, etc., etc. This is something I would personally urge everyone to apply in their everyday life. This will ensure, across the continents, better cooperation and better results.
Yeah, look, definitely. And we've seen a lot of issues where the time scale, the criminals move at a much faster pace than the regulatory frameworks allow. And the problem is, as time goes on, either evidence is lost or the crimes are committed to even get bigger and bigger. And by the time that they come to act, the damage is done, or too much damage is done. So I absolutely agree with you. Like the whole speed of collaboration, and that whether it's informal or formally allowed to collaborate. Because the other issue we're seeing as well is certain jurisdictions are not allowed to share certain information, and therefore really hampering investigations and hampering all these sort of governance and regulatory frameworks. I mean, Tim.
Okay, yeah, so I wanted to add, I think we've actually seen some cases where collaboration has been successful based on leveraging on the previous networks that are set up for traditional crime, for robbery cases and similar crimes. So we've seen at least some of the cybersecurity cases actually progress, and even suspects being caught, falling back on that traditional informal networks that was built up. previously. I think looking on, and one case actually where I was actually personally involved in, it has actually led now to more informal collaboration. It's not yet formalized, but at least that network has been set up informally that would allow for cases where cybercrime has been committed, for instance, in Uganda, in Tanzania, and the suspects, of course, the suspects know these weaknesses. They know the gaps that we have between the different regulations. So they actually move on to a different country, and they have been traced now to those different countries and held now in this foreign country and extradited to the country where the crime was committed.
It's very good. And Ahmed, from
Yeah,
your
I
side?
think it's all well said. I cannot stress more on the topic of the collaboration. This is one of the most important things. Because now, it's not about now acting in silos. It's a full ecosystem now. The collaboration is not only between the institutions, between the person, it's between the full chain and the full ecosystem. It's between the vendors, it's between the merchants, it's between the banks themselves, between the persons, between the regulators themselves. The whole ecosystem need to have some kind of a full collaboration in order to combat this. And for example, here in UAE, there's a lot of initiatives that are being governed and regulated by central banks and the bank federations for giving the opportunity and giving the platforms for sharing these kind of intelligence. So in case of any institution are facing some kind of scams or some kind of phishing or any kind of attacks, then sharing this kind of intelligence with others, analyzing it, discussing it together, might help saving someone else, and might help. And this is something that we are actually performing and excelling in it time after time and day after day. It's one of the most things. Another things, events like this, conferences where the people comes, from security perspective, or the security people, security professionals, anti-fraud, the risk managers coming together, collaborate together in multiple different, a lot of community activities, a lot of multiple councils to combat these kind of things. So without the collaboration, without the power of each one of us, we will never reach this kind. Unfortunately, on the other side, hackers and the bad guys are really collaborating also on their side as well to develop these kind of attacking tools and these kind of threats to us.
No, look, that's a very good point. And this is the thing where we are seeing it on a global scale. One stage was to see the hacking groups fighting each other. So someone would compromise something, another one would come in, patch the hole that was used and compromise it themselves to retain. Now they're actually working in collaboration together because they realize there's power, there's strength in our unity. And that's where I think we also need to be operating in the same mindset, that there's strength and power in our unity. And everything now these days has become a global scale. It's no longer localized, it's no longer now within my jurisdiction. I mean, a simple case we were looking at a while back, a person in Australia used a server in Malaysia to communicate with a server in Peru to commit the crime. Which jurisdiction do we go after? And unfortunately, without that collaboration, it would have ended. Once we left the border, things stopped. So the collaboration has to be also between the private sector and the government and law enforcement. It really needs to be that sort of broad spectrum. Otherwise, there's too many limitations. You just aren't able to progress. I mean, are we seeing anything across sort of that collaboration happening more often now, like between government and private sector? Are you guys having any experience in that area? Or?
Yeah, within government and private sector, within the national borders of our country, yes. But that is mandated by the regulations which have recently been set up. So like across 80% of our footprint, you find that the regulators work to the cybersecurity regulation. That's a financial regulator is working with the cybersecurity regulator just to ensure that some minimum baselines have been set up, including ensuring that if there is, for instance, you're faced by a cyber breach, cyber attack, that you actually inform the regulator and you also inform the customer. So that sort of collaboration is there, but it's mandated by law. I think the more effective collaboration is that organic, natural collaborations where you find private sector, industries from the same sector, from financial sector. Because remember, the criminal networks are the same. They'll attack bank A, bank B, bank C. So that knowledge sharing has really helped, at least from an organic perspective, to be able to, once one bank is attacked, then the other banks also are aware what was the methodology that was used in such a case and how can we be able to learn and prevent it in future.
Ahmed, 20 seconds, any closing comments?
So just again, I'm going to confirm what's saying. There's a lot of, on both on private and on governmental. First of all, there's a lot of regulations. I'm coming from a financial background, so it's a very highly regulated environment. So there's a lot of mandates for sharing and collaborating with others on. Plus, there's a lot of now evolving, a lot of private initiatives for integrating as well with multiple industry and multiple, because attacks might a little bit differ. Someone targeting, for example, oil and gas companies versus someone targeting financial versus sometimes education, a little bit might differ. So again, the collaboration, not only from inside one industry, but across the whole industry as well, will enrich and add more data. So a lot of things now is coming, a lot of private engagements and private organizations to ensure that this collaboration platform is set.
Thank you very much. I think unfortunately we're out of time. So I'd like to thank the panel for their contribution today. It was very insightful. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.